I thought my engagement party would be the happiest day of my life, the moment everything I dreamed of was finally coming true. But instead, it turned into something that I couldn't shake. My fiancé's mother whispered something that made my heart stop. And in that instant, my entire future seemed to unravel before me. My name is Emma Carter, and I was about to marry the love of my life. Ethan and I had been together for over 2 years, and everything had been perfect. We laughed together, supported each other through the hard times, and shared the same dreams for the future. I had always imagined our engagement party as a beautiful celebration, filled with family and friends, everyone smiling and enjoying the joy of our love. The venue was perfect. It was a small, cozy event space with soft lighting, fresh flowers, and a calm, elegant vibe. Our friends and family gathered around us, chatting and enjoying the night. I was glowing in my engagement dress, feeling excited, nervous, and overwhelmingly happy. Ethan stood by my side, holding my hand, his smile lighting up my world. This was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives. But there was always something in the back of my mind, something I couldn't shake. That something was Ethan's mother, Catherine. To be honest, I had always found it hard to connect with her. She was polite, but distant. Whenever we spent time together, I felt like she was sizing me up, trying to figure out if I was worthy of her son. I wanted her to like me, to accept me, but no matter how hard I tried, it seemed like I was always on the outside looking in. Tonight, as I looked around the room, everything seemed perfect. My mom, Linda, was beside me, her face full of pride as she looked at me. She had always been my biggest supporter, and having her there made me feel like everything was right in the world. My dad was joking with some of Ethan's friends, and the laughter echoed in the room, mixing with the clinking of glasses. I was in the moment, ready to celebrate my future with Ethan. But then, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I was standing next to Ethan, chatting with a group of friends, when I noticed Catherine across the room. Her eyes were locked on me, her expression unreadable. I smiled, trying to make eye contact, but she didn't return it. Instead, she looked away, taking a sip of her drink. I brushed it off. Maybe I was just overthinking things. As the night went on, the party continued without a hitch. Laughter, music, and the soft hum of conversations filled the space. But then, as Ethan raised his glass for a toast, I saw it. The moment that would change everything. Catherine stood up, raised her glass, and as she did, it slipped from her hand. The glass hit the floor with a loud crack, shattering into pieces. The room went quiet for a split second, everyone looking at her in surprise. Catherine quickly apologized, her face flushed. But as she bent down to pick up the pieces, I heard her whisper something under her breath to a woman sitting nearby. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then I caught the faint whisper, "She's wearing it." I froze. My stomach dropped. I turned instinctively to see if anyone had heard her, but no one seemed to notice. My heart raced. What did that mean? What was she talking about? I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to brush it off and join the conversation again, but I couldn't focus. The words, "she's wearing it," kept echoing in my mind. I glanced over at Catherine, who was still talking to the woman she had whispered to, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my dress. For a moment, I wondered if I had heard her wrong. Maybe she was talking about something else entirely, but the feeling that something was off wouldn't go away. I felt a knot in my stomach, something I hadn't felt all night. My excitement began to slip away, replaced by a creeping sense of dread. I looked down at my dress, unsure why it felt like Catherine's comment was about me. Was it about my dress? My engagement ring? What had I done wrong? I tried to focus on Ethan, who was still chatting with some of our friends, but the unease only grew stronger. The more I thought about Catherine's words, the more confused and unsettled I became. The happiness I had been feeling just moments ago started to fade, replaced by uncertainty and anxiety. I excused myself from the group and stepped away, hoping a few minutes of fresh air would clear my head. But as I walked toward the bathroom, I realized I couldn't escape this feeling. Something had shifted, and I didn't know if I could go back to the way things were before. The room felt a lot smaller than it had just moments ago. I could still hear the chatter and laughter from the party, but it all seemed so distant now. Catherine's words echoed in my mind. "She's wearing it." I tried to ignore the rising panic in my chest, but I couldn't. Every time I thought about it, my stomach twisted tighter. I kept glancing around, looking for something that would ground me again, but all I could see was Catherine's cold, calculating expression as she looked at me across the room. It was like she had just dropped a bomb, and no one, not even Ethan, noticed the impact it had on me. I didn't know what wearing it meant, but in that moment, it didn't matter. My mind was racing, connecting dots that might not even be there. Was it about my dress? The jewelry? The engagement ring? Maybe it was just a passing comment. But the way she whispered it so deliberately, with that look in her eyes, it didn't feel casual at all. It felt intentional, like she was trying to make some sort of statement. And I had no idea what that statement was. I turned to Ethan, trying to shake off the feeling that was creeping up on me. But as he continued talking to his friends, he looked so at ease, so unaware of the storm that was brewing inside me. I smiled at him, but it didn't reach my eyes. He seemed like he was having a great time, enjoying the party, and I didn't want to ruin that. After all, this night was supposed to be a celebration of our love, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about Catherine. She was so poised, so composed, always in control, and I had always felt like I was on the outside, trying to earn her approval. And now, it felt like she had just handed me a test I wasn't prepared for. I was wearing it. What did that mean? Why did I feel like I was being judged? Like I was failing something without even knowing what it was? I excused myself from the group, hoping to collect myself in the quiet of the bathroom. As I walked down the hall, I noticed the framed pictures of Ethan's family on the walls. Smiling faces, happy moments frozen in time. I used to look at those pictures and imagine myself fitting into that family. But now, I felt like an outsider, unsure of where I stood. I didn't know if it was my imagination, but everything seemed to be falling apart in slow motion. The bathroom door clicked behind me, and for the first time that night, I could breathe a little. I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked so calm, so composed, but inside, I was anything but. I ran my fingers over my engagement ring, feeling the cool metal against my skin. Was I wearing it the way Catherine thought I should? Was it too much? Too soon? I hadn't meant to upset anyone. I had just wanted to feel beautiful, to enjoy my engagement, to be a part of Ethan's world. But now I felt like I was trapped in a world that wasn't mine, a world where I was constantly being judged, silently scrutinized by someone who didn't even need to say much to make me feel small. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the storm in my chest. What was I supposed to do? Should I talk to Ethan about it? Should I confront Catherine directly? I wanted to be strong, to stand up for myself, but at that moment, I wasn't even sure what I was standing up for. I didn't know if it was my dress, my ring, or my very place in Ethan's life that had been called into question. I couldn't stay in the bathroom forever. The party was still going on, and I had promised Ethan I'd be there with him. I had to face whatever was waiting for me outside that door. But as I stood there, staring at my reflection, I realized something. I wasn't just upset about Catherine's words. I was upset because I had let her get to me. I had let her make me question my worth, my place in this family. I had allowed her silent judgment to create doubt in my own mind. And that, more than anything, was what hurt the most. I wiped my face with a tissue, trying to pull myself together. I had come this far. I wasn't going to let one comment, no matter how loaded, ruin the night. But I also knew I couldn't just ignore what had happened. I needed answers, even if they weren't easy to find. I needed to understand what Catherine's comment meant, and I needed to do it without letting it tear me apart. As I opened the bathroom door, I took one last deep breath, steadied my resolve, and walked back out into the chaos of the party. The music played in the background. The laughter continued, but everything felt different now. The weight of the unknown was heavier than ever, and I had no idea how I was going to face Catherine or Ethan without addressing what had just happened. I stepped out of the bathroom, trying to pull myself together, but I could feel the tension still simmering in my chest. The party buzzed around me, but all I could hear was the echo of Catherine's whispered words. "She's wearing it." My mind was spinning, my thoughts tangled in a web of confusion and frustration. What was I supposed to do? Was I overreacting? Maybe I was imagining things, but something in the pit of my stomach told me I couldn't just let it go. I had to know what was really going on. I found Ethan in the corner of the room, laughing with a group of our friends. His face lit up with that charming smile I loved so much. For a brief moment, I thought about pulling him aside right then, about letting everything spill out, about how Catherine's comment had made me feel, how confused I was. But a part of me hesitated. I didn't want to spoil his night, to drag him into a confrontation that didn't need to happen. He had enough on his plate with his work and the excitement of our engagement. This was supposed to be a celebration, not a moment for conflict. But the more I stood there, watching him, the more I realized I couldn't just ignore this. I had to confront it. If I let it simmer, if I let this feeling of unease continue to fester, it would only grow. And the last thing I wanted was to keep this silent tension between us, like a slow-burning fire that eventually consumes everything. I needed clarity. I needed to know what Catherine meant and why it had shaken me so much. I took a deep breath, excused myself from the conversation, and walked over to where Catherine was standing near the back of the room. She was holding a glass of wine in one hand, chatting with some of the other guests. But when she saw me approaching, her smile faltered, just slightly. It wasn't enough to be obvious, but I noticed it. I could tell she had seen me leaving the bathroom earlier, her eyes flicking to the door, as if she knew what I was doing in there. There was a moment of silence, a pause in the conversation as everyone turned to look at me. I stood there, unsure of how to start, my nerves getting the best of me. "Catherine?" I said, my voice steady, but not without a hint of nervousness. "I need to talk to you for a second." Her eyes narrowed, and for a brief moment, I wondered if she already knew what I was going to ask. But she didn't back down. She nodded politely, motioning for me to follow her as she moved to a quieter part of the room, away from the crowd. As we walked, I could feel the weight of the moment settling over me. This was it. This was the conversation I had been avoiding all night, the one that had been eating at me since that moment when I heard her whisper those words. Once we were out of earshot of everyone else, I took a deep breath. My heart was racing. I had been avoiding this confrontation for so long, but it was time. I couldn't let her words hang over me any longer. "What did you mean earlier?" I asked, my voice quieter now, but firm. "When you said, 'she's wearing it,' what were you talking about?" For a moment, Catherine didn't say anything. She just looked at me, her expression unreadable. Then, finally, she took a slow sip of her wine before replying, "I'm not sure what you're referring to." I stared at her, trying to keep my composure. I wasn't going to let her brush me off. This wasn't a small misunderstanding. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You whispered it to someone at the party. You said, 'She's wearing it.'" I paused, feeling my pulse quicken. Was it about my dress? My ring? I need to know what that was about, Catherine. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes, a momentary crack in her composed exterior. She set her glass down on a nearby table, her fingers tightening around the stem as she looked away. "Emma," she began slowly, "I didn't mean for you to overhear that." My heart skipped a beat. "Then what did you mean?" I asked again, the frustration I had been holding in now coming to the surface. I didn't care if it made her uncomfortable. I needed to know. She sighed, rubbing her temples as though she were considering how much to reveal. "It's not about your dress or your ring or anything like that," she said, her voice suddenly softer but still cold. "It's about tradition. It's about what's expected." I felt a sinking sensation in my chest. "What do you mean, what's expected?" I pressed. She looked at me, her eyes sharp, calculating. "It's about the heirloom necklace, the one that's been passed down through the family for generations. It was supposed to go to the woman who would marry Ethan. It was meant for someone who truly belonged in this family, someone who had earned her place." She paused, then added with a slight sneer, "I wasn't expecting you to be the one wearing it so soon." My heart felt like it had dropped into my stomach. The heirloom necklace, the one that had been in Ethan's family for as long as anyone could remember. I had been told it was an important family tradition, but I never imagined it carried this much weight. Catherine's words stung, as though I had been accused of something I hadn't even known was a test. She wasn't just judging my choice of jewelry. She was judging me, my place in Ethan's life, my place in his family. "Catherine, I don't know what to say," I whispered, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to come. "I didn't know. I never meant to upset you." She shrugged, her posture stiff. "You're not the one who upset me. It's just not what I would have chosen." Her tone was final, and I knew I wasn't going to get any more out of her. I took a step back, feeling a wave of disappointment wash over me. I hadn't expected Catherine to be so upfront about her feelings, but now that I knew the truth, I couldn't ignore it. It wasn't just about the necklace. It was about control. She had been trying to test me, trying to see if I was worthy of being a part of their family. And in that moment, I realized that I wasn't just marrying Ethan. I was marrying into a family with expectations I hadn't even begun to understand. I took a deep breath and forced a smile, even though it didn't reach my eyes. "Well, thank you for telling me, but just so you know, I'm not going to let this control me. I'm with Ethan because I love him, and I'm not going to let anyone, especially not you, make me feel like I'm not good enough." Catherine's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. She just turned, leaving me standing there, alone and uncertain. But in that moment, I knew something important. I wasn't going to let her or anyone undermine me. This was my life, and no one would take that from me. The moment I walked away from Catherine, a mix of emotions swirled inside me. Part of me was relieved to have finally heard the truth, but another part of me felt utterly shattered. The words she had said echoed in my mind. It was meant for someone who truly belonged in this family. The sting of those words still hadn't fully faded, and I couldn't ignore the tight knot in my chest. I felt a deep, unsettling sense of betrayal. How had I ended up in this situation? I had always tried so hard to fit in with Ethan's family, to prove myself worthy of their love and approval. But now, it felt like I was never going to be good enough in Catherine's eyes. I walked back into the party, my head spinning. I tried to pull myself together, but the weight of the conversation with Catherine was heavy on my shoulders. I couldn't focus on the chatter, couldn't enjoy the music, and certainly couldn't enjoy the excitement of the night. I glanced over at Ethan, who was still surrounded by his friends, his face beaming with happiness, unaware of the storm that was raging inside me. I wanted to tell him everything about Catherine's words, about how they made me feel like I was nothing more than an outsider, but I couldn't. Not yet. I needed a moment to breathe, to gather my thoughts before I could lay it all out. I stepped outside for a few minutes, needing space to think. The cool night air hit my face, offering some comfort as I leaned against the railing. I closed my eyes, letting the silence wash over me, but it didn't last long. The thoughts kept coming, one after another, faster than I could process them. Catherine's judgment, her coldness, the feeling that no matter what I did, I would never be accepted by her. I tried to remind myself that I was marrying Ethan, not his mother, but the truth was, Catherine's opinion had always loomed over me, and now that it was out in the open, I couldn't ignore it. As I stood there, lost in thought, Ethan came outside, walking toward me with his usual easy smile. His presence should have made me feel comforted, but instead, it felt like a weight on my chest. He didn't know what I had just learned, what had been said behind my back. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "Emma?" Ethan's voice was gentle as he approached me. "Are you okay? You've been gone for a while." I nodded quickly, trying to hide the raw emotion I felt inside. "Yeah, just needed some air." He looked at me closely, concern crossing his face. "You don't look okay. What's going on? You've been acting different all night." I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment I had been avoiding. "Ethan, I need to talk to you about something," I said, my voice shaky. "I'm not sure how to say this, but I can't keep it to myself anymore." Ethan's expression changed. "What's wrong? Whatever it is, we can talk about it." I hesitated, looking down at my hands. I could feel the weight of what I was about to say, but I knew I had to do it. If I didn't, this would eat away at me forever. I looked up at him, meeting his eyes. "It's about your mom." His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't interrupt me. "What about her? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "She said something at the party. When you were busy talking to your friends, she whispered something to one of the guests. She said, 'She's wearing it.' And when I asked her what she meant, she told me she was talking about the heirloom necklace. She said it was meant for someone who truly belonged in your family, someone who had earned their place." Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to shock. He blinked a few times, processing what I just said. "Wait," he said, his voice low. "What does that even mean?" I shook my head, feeling a rush of emotions that I couldn't contain anymore. I don't know, but it felt like she was saying I wasn't good enough, that I didn't belong. And it hurts, Ethan. I've always tried so hard to fit in with your family, to make your mom see that I'm not just some outsider. But now it feels like nothing I do will ever be enough. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, and I tried to blink them away. I didn't want to cry in front of him, but it was too much. The weight of the evening, the sting of Catherine's words, the doubt that had been planted in my mind. It was all too much. Ethan stood there in silence for a moment, his face a mix of shock and frustration. Then he took a step forward, reaching for my hand. "Emma," he said softly, "I had no idea she said that. I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I never wanted you to feel like that." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. "I don't know what to do, Ethan. I want to be part of your family, but your mom makes it feel like I'm always being judged. I don't know how to fix it." He squeezed my hand, his voice full of sincerity. "You don't have to fix anything. You belong with me. I'm marrying you, Emma, because I love you, and that's all that matters. I'm not going to let her or anyone else make you feel like you're not good enough." His words, so simple yet so powerful, made my heart ache. In that moment, I realized that I had been so focused on seeking approval from his family, especially Catherine, that I had forgotten what really mattered. Ethan and I were building our future together, and that was all I needed. I took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. "I love you, Ethan. I just needed to hear that." He smiled and pulled me into a hug, holding me close. "We're in this together, Emma. Always." As I rested my head on his shoulder, I realized that while Catherine's words had hurt me, they had also shown me something important. It wasn't about fitting into someone else's idea of what I should be. It was about being true to myself and to the man I loved, and that was all that mattered. The party was still going on inside, but as I stood there with Ethan, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The night wasn't about impressing anyone anymore. It was about us, our future, our love, and the promise we had made to each other. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what anyone else said, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The rest of the evening was a blur of muted conversation and half-hearted smiles. The party continued without a hitch, but I couldn't fully immerse myself in it anymore. I could hear the laughter, feel the music vibrating through the walls, and see the joy in Ethan's eyes as he spoke to his friends. But all I could think about was the conversation we'd just had and the weight of Catherine's words still hanging in the air. After we spoke outside, I had told myself that everything would be fine, that I would let it go. But it wasn't that simple. The tension had been lifted between Ethan and me, and I felt a renewed sense of clarity in our relationship. But the lingering doubt in my heart couldn't be dismissed so easily. I had always hoped that the complications with Catherine would resolve themselves over time, but I realized now that they wouldn't. This was something I had to confront head-on, not just with her, but within myself. As we left the party later that night, I was quiet, lost in my thoughts. Ethan noticed, of course. His concern was evident, but I reassured him that I was okay, that I was just tired. The drive home was a quiet one, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a quiet we both needed, one where we could process the emotions of the night without speaking about them just yet. When we finally arrived at our apartment, the first thing I did was take off my engagement ring. I hadn't realized it until then, but I had been clenching my hand so tightly all night that it had left an impression on my skin. I placed it carefully on the kitchen counter and stood there for a moment, looking at it. Ethan's face flashed in my mind, how he had looked at me when I shared my pain, the understanding in his eyes. I realized that what I was holding on to wasn't just the ring or the event. It was the fear of not being accepted, not being good enough for the people around me. But the truth was, Ethan had already chosen me. His love for me wasn't conditional on anyone else's approval, and I had to trust that. The fact that he stood by me tonight, that he supported me, despite the awkwardness with his mother, meant more to me than any family heirloom or tradition ever could. The next day, Ethan and I sat down together in the living room, the remnants of the party still lingering in the corners of the apartment. He reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I've been thinking about last night," he said quietly, "about what you said, and I want you to know that no matter what happens with my mom, we're a team. I'll never let anyone, including her, make you feel like you're not enough." Tears welled up in my eyes at his words, and for the first time in a long time, I let them fall. I had been so caught up in the idea of needing validation from his family that I'd almost forgotten what really mattered. I had Ethan's love, I had his commitment, and that was all I needed. "I just want to feel like I belong," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want to feel like I'm a part of your world, not an outsider." "You belong with me," he said, his voice steady. "And that's all that matters. We'll figure out how to handle my mom, but that doesn't change the fact that you're the one I want to be with forever." His words were like a balm to my soul, soothing the hurt I hadn't fully realized I'd been carrying. The relief was overwhelming. For so long, I had sought approval from the people around me, from his family, from society's standards of what was right. But in that moment, I realized that the only approval I needed was his, and more importantly, my own. In the days that followed, I found myself reflecting more on what I had learned. The confrontation with Catherine had been painful, yes, but it had opened my eyes to something important. I had been allowing myself to shrink, to make myself smaller, just to fit into someone else's expectations. I had been trying so hard to prove myself worthy to someone who didn't matter as much as I had thought. Ethan and I sat down with his mother a few days later, just the three of us. It wasn't as dramatic as I had imagined it would be, but it was necessary. Catherine, as always, was polite but reserved, her eyes flicking between us with a slight hint of surprise. She had no idea how much her words had affected me. I couldn't expect her to change overnight, but I wasn't going to allow her to define my place in Ethan's life. I just want you to know, Catherine, that I'm not trying to take the place of anyone in this family, I said, my voice calm but firm, but I do want to be part of it, and I need you to respect that. Her expression was unreadable, but she finally nodded. I understand, she said, her voice surprisingly soft. I may not have expressed it the right way, but I do respect you, and I want what's best for Ethan. If that means accepting you, then that's what I'll do. It wasn't a perfect resolution. I didn't expect Catherine to suddenly change overnight, but I could see the shift. There was a crack in her armor, a small moment of understanding. That was enough for me. I wasn't going to chase her approval anymore. I was going to build my life with Ethan, with or without her blessing. As the weeks passed, I felt the weight of the past few days lift off my shoulders. I began to focus more on what was important, Ethan and I, our future together, and the family we were going to build. I knew that not everyone would approve of our relationship or our choices, but I also knew that we didn't need everyone's approval to be happy. We just needed each other. And in the end, that was the greatest lesson of all. I had to trust myself, trust that I was enough, and trust that the love I shared with Ethan was all that really mattered. The rest would fall into place.